Hello there, Burger with Cheese, and welcome to Beef Reviews. This is the series where I review the latest theatrically released film that has come out if it piques my interest. Unfortunately, with this whole global pandemic, the theaters are basically closed. No new films are coming out, but this film comes along and is like, you know what, we will release it on video on demand. And that has to do with the success of Trolls World Tour, especially with the fact that it grossed a lot of money even though it was straight to video. And that film, of course, I am talking about Scoob, another animated feature, this time based off of Scooby-Doo, a way more well-known property than Trolls. It is actually the first theatrically released animated film, but technically not released in theaters because of the whole coronavirus thing. So my background with Scooby is actually a lot more prominent than other people, which gives me more care towards this film. I've seen reviews from people like Chris Stuckman where they say this is one of the most boring films they've ever seen, but I at least had interest in watching this film. I watched this film all the way to the end. And that has to do with the fact that I grew up with Scooby-Doo as a kid. I watched the Scooby-Doo cartoons like What's New Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo Where Are You? I remember watching films like those direct-to-video animated films that there are so many of them, like the crossovers with the WWEs, even though I didn't watch them. The ones I remember watching are Scooby and the Cyber Chase, the one with Ultra Instinct Shaggy, I think it's called the Dinosaur Chase, and then I remember this one with rock and roll and vampires. It's not the Kiss one, it's something else. Then I remember watching the live-action theatrical films, and even the live-action ones that were made for TV, those ones that aired in Cartoon Network like around 2010. So, although Scooby-Doo hasn't really been one of my top childhood impacts of all of the cartoons that I watched, I still remember Scooby-Doo a lot in my childhood, and I definitely appreciate it. So, let's talk about this film. What did I think about it? I'm going to sum it up real quick. I think this film is very disappointing. It's not even close to what a Scooby-Doo movie should be. And first, let me get into the pros. They're not really that many. There are a lot of cons I want to talk about. So the pros. I really liked Scooby in this film. Scooby was probably the only thing that has stayed 100% faithful. He's voiced by Frank Welker. He still has that very, very well-known Scooby-Doo charm to him. It makes him such a likable, goofy character. And, I mean, that's really the only thing they kept the same. Out of all of the voice actors of the Mystery Inc. gang, that was really the only character that stayed the same in terms of his voice, and that's very disappointing. Moving on, I really like how they were setting up a cinematic universe for Hanna-Barbera. The execution of it is bad, but I'll get to that later. But the fact that adding Hanna-Barbera characters to this universe, especially for how obscure they are, I really like their inclusion, specifically with Dig Dastardly as the villain. When I first heard this movie was announced, I was shocked, because I remember him as that antagonist from Wacky Races, and other than a couple of crossovers, this had nothing to do with Scooby at all. So seeing him as the main antagonist of the film got me a little excited, and I definitely like the references. I love Dick Dastardly being in this film. I really like other characters referenced in this film. And there are even more characters that appear by reference or by cameo appearances, but they're kind of spoilers, so I'm not really gonna tell them what they are. Another thing is some elements, although not that many unfortunately, are really, really faithful to Scooby-Doo in terms of the styles of the plot points and the hijinks that the characters get into. That is especially apparent with the opening scene where the Scooby-Doo gang is kids. I really thought it was really nice. It started off really well. That whole haunted house scene was very short, but not really that long and not really that climactic. But it does set up the Mystery Inc. gang being banded together and stuff like that. But the rest of the film didn't really follow that, so it ended up being more of a letdown. But other than that, there were some callbacks to the style of the cartoony hijinks, like Shaggy and Scooby in many scenes, where they're being chased by Dick Dastardly's robots. They have comedic, cartoony sound effects and cartoony motions and slapstick and scenes where Shaggy and Scooby are disguised that really call back to the original cartoons, and I really like those. I love the fluid animation that is included with them, which is my final pro of this film. The animation is way better than I thought. I was going into this film, the trailers looked the animation in the trailers looked very empty. They didn't really look like they reached their full potential. I still don't think that, but after seeing certain scenes being fluidly animated, this is the best animation so far I've ever seen of Scooby-Doo in terms of all of the films that have ever been released, even including the live action ones. And some of the action scenes are very nice to look at. They're very action-packed. It didn't really feel lifeless. The animation is really good, although not as good as other films like Pixar and Disney make, or even the Lego Movie, which is also Warner Animation Group films. Those Lego movies are beautifully animated, but that's besides the point. Oh, there are so many cons with this film. Let me start with the story. Basically, the story is trying to be as meta as possible, as hip to 2020 kids as possible, and I mean it's everywhere. The mobile phones, the jokes about Netflix, social media. There was even some that call back to Harry Potter and Wonder Woman, but I didn't really mind those that much because they're more timeless. But the emphasis on social media, internet, and the music choices, it was very cringeworthy a lot of times. The score was really trying hard to be techno pop related 2020 music, and I didn't like it at all. And the song choices, it may have to do with the fact that I don't like modern music in general. I only listen to stuff from the 20th century. I know I have a very weird taste in music, especially since I'm 16, but still, I feel like in 5 years, this entire film is going to be dated because of it. There's dabbing in this film, and I thought it was used ironically, judging by the trailers. It's kinda ironic, but not really. I'm pretty sure they're trying to be hip with the kids because they use it for a specific character. But going back onto it, the biggest problem with this movie, it doesn't really feel like a Scooby-Doo movie. 90% of the film outside the opening is Scooby-Doo and Shaggy team up with the Blue Falcon, and they go on this adventure quest because Dick Dastardly is seeking these skulls, and Scooby-Doo is the key or something to open them up to this underworld for a treasure. No paranormal fun mysteries. This is just a straight-up superhero-like adventure film. And then Fred, Daphne, and Velma are on the side like, where did Scooby and Shaggy go? We need to go find them. We gotta go look for clues, which is probably the only mystery-like thing, but it's technically not. Dick Dastardly is not this, like, paranormal villain. He's just a normal supervillain. It's not like Scooby-Doo at all. And I wouldn't mind Dick Dastardly if they added some sort of paranormal twist to him, like he's being possessed by this actual supervillain and stuff like that. But unfortunately, they didn't really use him properly. It's just another MCU imitator, like those cinematic universes that are gonna be like, oh, we're gonna be the next MCU, we're gonna have this $10 billion franchise with 20 movies, and we're gonna be so successful. This time they're just trying with the Hanna-Barbera characters, and as a first film, it tried 90% to be a cinematic universe movie, 10% Scooby, and 9% of that 10% was the first 10 minutes. This didn't feel like a Scooby movie at all, except that they had Scooby-Doo characters in it. Also, another problem is the extremely fast and sporadic pacing. Now, it isn't a problem with Warner Animation Group's films like the Lego Movie and Storks, because they're really well thought out in terms of their structure, but with Scoob, they just jump from one scene to another, and I completely lose track about everything. Also, they have these really, really phoned in cliches about friendship. That's how the film starts, like, Shaggy and Scooby get separated because the Mystery Inc. gang was gonna be in the contract with this celebrity, and Shaggy and Scooby are like, oh, they're not material enough to be represented in the public eye for us, so they need to be separated. Shaggy and Scooby are like, oh, we will go now. We don't really have good friends. That was so weird. And then the whole dynamic of Scooby kind of like separated from Shaggy because Shaggy's a coward and Scooby's trying to be brave and join the Blue Falcons team. That was kind of stupid. Real quickly, the last big issue to address, and that has to do with the characters, is the voice actors. That is the biggest part of controversy with this film. People did not like the recasting. They thought it was bad. It's even worse in the fact that some of the original voice actors, like Matthew Litter for Shaggy, didn't even know that they were being recasted. They didn't get any word from Warner Brothers, which is completely cheap. They're the original Scooby-Doo voice actors. I don't understand what they were doing. They just had Frank Welker. And the voice acting in general is not that bad. There are some elements to Fred's voice and with Shaggy's voice, but in the end it kind of just feels stale. Just like if the story is already soulless in the fact that it's not a traditional Scooby-Doo film and it's just an MCU copycat, it just makes the film even more stale and boring when you don't have the original voice actors for the characters. Now the characters themselves, Shaggy's kind of just there. Shaggy's being Shaggy, but the voice acting kind of just tanks him a little bit. I don't really have anything to say about him. Fred, Daphne, and Velma are sidelined the entire film. They literally have no character other than their one-dimensional traits. I don't think there's even Fred. He's kind of a jockey, more idiotic represented character. I did not like the way Fred was in the film. I don't remember him being such an idiot. Then Velma's, of course, the smart one who uses big brain words, but I mean, that's Velma. And then Daphne, I don't think I got anything from Daphne, I'll be completely honest. She literally has no character. Then Blue Falcon is just a goddamn man-child, and I know they're trying to play it off and they're supposed to have some sort of character arc, I don't know, but he's such a pathetic piece of crap. He's so annoying with the fact that, oh, I'm the greatest superhero, but also I'm not because I'm a coward and I'm so scared. He has no character growth. And then in the climax, because we need to have a climax, Dynamite is like, you know what? You are Blue Falcon. I'm finally going to accept you, even though you are a pathetic man-child. And speaking of Dynamite, the dog sidekick of Blue Falcon, probably is my third favorite character in this. Other than Dick Dastardly and Scooby, I liked him the best. Because, well, I mean, he's the one that is, like, only making sense. And, of course, there's the girl, and I forgot her name again. See, you can't even get characters because, like, they're trying to cram in Hanna-Barbera characters for the cinematic universe. I forgot what her name was. And because of this movie doesn't have any charming, good substance other than Scooby-Doo. And, going into spoilers, one of the characters that's also represented, Captain Caveman, he's like one of those obstacle characters in the quest to get one of the skulls. He's just there. I really liked his inclusion, but once again, it's for cinematic universe building. And then this whole Scoob is the key to this underworld treasure because he's the descendant of Alexander the Great. I think once again had really good concept, even though it wasn't a tradition. Like, if they had some paranormal backstory to this concept of Scoob being the key, it could actually be an interesting film. And even then, they didn't have the paranormal stuff. Even then, it still was horribly executed. And in the end, it's just a generic kids flick. And that's what my overall opinion is. It's just a generic kids flick. Scoob is just a movie that has no soul, that makes Scooby-Doo Scooby-Doo. Which is why Scoob is not a Scooby-Doo movie. It's just a basic MCU imitator for a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And for that, it just isn't worth watching. It's a good kid distractor, I'll be honest. It will entertain kids very well. So as a good family film, I mean, it's not that bad. But if you really want to have a good time watching a Scooby-Doo film, watch the live action movies. They're technically worse, but the insane adult humor and just everything being bad, this live action Scooby-Doo films, and especially since they have personality in them, the live action Scooby-Doo films are actually way more enjoyable to watch than this. And that is why I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. It is probably the most average film you can get out of Scooby-Doo because they really didn't do anything with the character. Alright, so that is my review of Scoob. Thanks for watching. I know I was rambling for a long time. Wow, 15 minutes long. I wasn't expecting me to ramble this much. I only had some bullet points down, which is why it kind of feels unscripted and more like a podcast. But I didn't really want to spend that much time. But now I gotta edit a lot of images. But Alright, I hope you guys have a good day. See you guys later. Peace out. Bye.